Chapter 1. The Ominous Whisper, Expanded. The moon hung high in the inky black sky, a luminous orb that lit up the small town of Hollow Glen with its eerie glow. The town was small, with cozy houses lined up neatly along the streets, each home telling its own story. Most of the windows were shut tight, and curtains drawn, keeping the inhabitants shielded from whatever darkness lurked outside. Rustling leaves whispered tales of old, as the fresh night air carried sounds through the streets. The townsfolk hurried home before twilight fell, shuffling along the cracked sidewalks and whispering warnings about what lurked in the shadows beyond the street lamp's golden glow. They spoke of pale, faceless figures drifting silently through the darkness, searching for those brave, or foolish, enough to stray too far from the safety of their homes. The whispers filled the air with a scent of fear, swirling like the autumn leaves that danced in the wind. It is said, the voice of the baker would quaver as he wiped his hands on his apron, that if these entities caught you, they would peel away your features. His eyes widened as he recounted the tales while the children listened wide-eyed, their imaginations ignited. You would become a ghoul, forever wandering the night, cursed to live in darkness and lose your mind. But young Timmy Jacobs, an adventurous boy of 12, was determined to uncover the truth behind these haunting tales. Timmy was small for his age, with tousled brown hair that often fell over his bright green eyes that sparkled with curiosity and wonder. He often ignored the concerned warnings from his mother, who would shake her head with worry, and the trembling elders of Hollow Glen, their voices thick with age and panic. His curiosity burned brighter than his fears, like a flickering flame dancing stubbornly against a gusty wind. Clutching a small flashlight in one hand, an old and trusted companion, and a ragged notebook in the other, Timmy felt somewhat invincible. Who could be afraid of shadows and whispers? He believed that tales of horror were just stories meant to frighten children and spice up dull days. Taking a deep breath to gather courage, he steeled himself as he crossed into the woods that bordered his backyard like a dark, uncharted ocean. Once inside the trees, the air quickly grew colder, nipping at his exposed skin like tiny icy fingers. The tall trees loomed above him like silent sentinels, their branches reaching outward like clawing hands, casting curious, twisting shadows that danced on the forest floor. A shiver ran down his spine, but he swallowed hard, drawing upon his adventurous spirit as he pressed forward. As he ventured deeper, Timmy was welcomed by an unsettling silence, as if the world had hushed in anticipation. It was there, surrounded by the dense foliage, that he heard the first whisper. At first, it was just a soft sound, almost like a gentle breeze flowing through the leaves. But then it became clear, rising above the quiet night air. Timmy, it crooned, a tone both inviting and sinister, curling around his name like smoke. He squinted into the darkness, trying to make sense of what he heard. Maybe it's just the wind, he thought, trying to dismiss the feeling of unease creeping into his chest. But still, something within him stirred. It was a mix of fear and fascination. Could this be a trick of his imagination, or was there truly something lurking in the shadows just beyond the trees? Pushing aside his gnawing dread, he took another step forward, eager to investigate the source of the voice. As he moved deeper into the forest, the trees parted to reveal a clearing where the moonlight spilled like silvery water, illuminating everything in a ghostly glow. The small clearing felt like a different world, and at its center stood an old, decayed statue. Its features were worn away, resembling a once grand figure that had succumbed to the relentless passing of time. The statue stood tall, but cracked, with vines crawling over it like nature's attempt to reclaim its territory. Curiosity piqued, Timmy approached it cautiously. His fingers brushed against the cold stone, sending a shiver through him. Suddenly, the whispers intensified, swirling around him like a whirlwind of forgotten souls, growing louder, wrapping him in an embrace of chilling voices. In that instant, a chilling breeze swept through the clearing, making Timmy's skin prickle with an overwhelming sense of foreboding. He turned quickly, only to find himself surrounded by tall shadows. Their shapes were indistinct, swirling and shadowy figures cloaked in darkness, their presence heavy with an undeniable malevolence. Panic seized him, and he stumbled backward, but it was too late. The figures swept closer, their faceless forms billowing like dark smoke against the moonlight. "Timmy, join us," they hissed, their guttural voices resonating through the stillness of the night. "Embrace the darkness, shed your skin. A surge of terror filled him as he turned on his heel to run. The shadows chased him. He could feel the air cooling around him, the darkness clawing at his back as if trying to reach him with cold, jagged fingers. His heart raced, pounding against his chest like a drum. Branches clawed at his clothes as he fled, weaving through the trees. Roots sprang up like sinister sentinels, trying to trip him, making him stumble through the twisted darkness. He could hear the whispers fading behind him, but the dread lingered. Had he truly escaped, or was something now following him? Each fleeting moment felt eternal as fear pumped through his veins. Finally, Timmy burst out of the woods and into the safety of his backyard, collapsing onto the cool grass beneath him. He gasped for breath. The familiar sounds of the town felt remarkably comforting. Crickets chirped a soft melody, and a night owl hooted in the distance as if singing him a soothing song. Yet the memory of those faceless figures gnawed at him, lingering like a bad taste in his mouth. He had ventured out to seek thrills, but instead he had stumbled upon the horrors spoken of quietly in cautionary tales. Just a trick of the shadows, he told himself resolutely as he bolted through the back door. I must have imagined it. Yet, deep inside, he could not shake off the encounter. Night after night, he tried to convince himself that the shadows were merely a figment of his adventurous mind, yet the worry in his mother's voice echoed in his thoughts. Days passed slowly, like molasses sliding down a hill, and Timmy could feel a change in himself. The encounter had awakened something dark inside him. Whenever night fell, unease settled over him like a heavy shroud. He couldn't help but glance out the window to peer into the darkness, half expecting to see something lurking there, waiting for him. His nights became riddled with nightmares, vivid and haunting, filled with the faceless figures creeping around him, whispering his name, urging him to join them. In the realm of his dreams, they called to him in croaking tones, their outstretched hands clawing toward his face, trying to peel away his features just as the townsfolk had warned. No longer was he merely a curious boy. Within the stillness of the night, he felt an undeniable pull, a lure he could not grasp, tugging at his very essence. His mother noticed the change in her son's demeanor. She often found him drawn away, staring blankly into the distance, as if lost in a fog of dark thoughts. His eyes carried a shadow that hadn't been there before, a flicker of fear she couldn't quite understand. Concerned, she urged him to stay close to home, often recounting tales of others who had ventured into the woods and never returned. "Stay where I can see you, Timmy," she would say, her voice laced with worry. But she did not know how deep the shadows now lurked in Timmy's mind, and how they clung to him like an unwanted friend. One fateful night, unable to bear the overwhelming terror any longer, Timmy resolved to face his fears once and for all. "I need to know what they want. I'll find out the truth," he whispered to himself. With newfound determination coursing through him, he filled his rucksack with a flashlight, snacks, and his trusty little notebook to record the truth he sought. The notebook had pages filled with sketches and notes from his many adventures, but now it felt like he was preparing for a perilous journey. Ignoring his mother's worried protests, Timmy slipped out just after midnight, when the air felt thick and almost oppressive, crackling with dark energy. As he made his way back to the woods, he felt the thrill of the adventure mingling with the fear bubbling in his stomach. Each step forward felt like crossing into another world, an ominous foreboding maze that coiled before him. With every step he took into the dark forest, he could feel the chill of unseen eyes watching him, hanging onto his every thought and action. The whispers returned, louder now, more insistent, swirling in the air like a dense fog. "Timmy," they crooned, "we've been waiting for you. It is time to unveil the truth. You belong with us." And in that moment, he could no longer deny the truth that tangled within his heart. The shadows called to him, not just through fear, but with a sickly sweet allure, a pull that made his heart race. As he approached the clearing again, the statue stood there in its solemn glory, but it felt different this time, alive, almost pulsing with a grotesque energy that vibrated in the air around him. Timmy noticed strange markings on the ground that seemed to dance with flickering light, guiding him closer. The shadows twisted and writhed in excitement, almost beckoning him to approach, coaxing him forward with a hunger he could sense in the pit of his stomach. With trembling hands and a heart racing with both dread and allure, Timmy stepped forward, each stride feeling like it took an eternity. As he reached out to touch the statue again, the shadows wrapped around him, pulling him into a cascade of whispers. They erupted into a cacophony of voices in a rising tide of sound. "Welcome, Timmy, become one of us. They clawed at his senses, tearing at the very essence of who he was, threatening to strip away his last glimmer of humanity. Terror clawed at his throat, and his mind raced. This was not just a haunt, it was a hunger, and it was insatiable. Would the shadows truly consume him? Would he lose everything? In that moment of choice and fear, he realized the surrounding darkness trembled with both fascination and dread, as light and dark intertwined within the depths of his heart. Would he dare to confront this darkness and uncover the truth, or would he let it swallow him whole? As fear and curiosity warred within him, Timmy stood at the precipice of fate, ready to step into a night filled with shadows, whispers, and an uncertain truth waiting to be unveiled. Would he become the boy who faced the darkness, or would he become just another faceless whisper in the chilling whispers of Hollow Glen? Timmy's heart thundered like a drum in a marching band as the shadows surged closer, creeping toward him from all angles. Their forms were now more distinct, and with every passing moment, they became more terrifying. Yes, there in the dark, he could see the jagged edges of their bodies, breaking through the thick drapes of darkness. They bore no faces, only blank, smooth surfaces where eyes and smiles should be. Fear wrapped its icy fingers around him, making his breath short and rapid. He spun around, trying to find a way out, but every direction was consumed by darkness. The whispers, soft and eerie, grew louder, wrapping around him like a vine tightening its grip. They called to him, promising him answers that seemed just out of reach. "Join us, Timmy, you are chosen," they said, their voices a mixture of sweet honey and sharp thorns. "You seek answers, and we provide them. We are here for you." The shadows moved with a purpose, shifting and twirling, cloaking him in a chilling embrace that felt almost like a caress, but he knew better. Timmy felt despair flood his mind, dark and heavy like a storm cloud. He stumbled backward, blindly ignoring the sharp roots that reached out like skeletal fingers, trying to trip him. "No," he gasped, his heart racing faster than he thought possible. He needed to escape, to break free, to erase the whispers from his mind once and for all. But with every twist and turn, the shadows engulfed him, swallowing him whole, leaving only swirling darkness dancing in his thoughts. Suddenly, a vision pierced through the fog that enveloped him. In his mind's eye, he saw the statue, the ancient stone figure that stood at the edge of Hollow Glen, seeming so still yet somehow alive. Timmy watched as its stone limbs shifted and writhed with a life of their own, and panic surged through him as he screamed. But no sound reached his lips. He was surrounded by the faceless entities, realizing in that terrifying moment that they weren't there to harm him. They sought something about him, something precious. They wanted to claim him as one of their own. But accepting their power meant losing himself entirely, trading away his identity for a new and grotesque existence. A flickering memory danced in his mind, a story his grandmother would tell during sleepy afternoons. In her soft, warm voice, she spoke of a time long ago when the faceless ones reigned over Hollow Glen, taking the very faces of anyone they deemed unworthy. Those unfortunate souls wandered endlessly through a cursed dimension, forever trapped in an endless night. The darkness now hungered for a new host, a fresh soul to devour. And here stood Timmy, at the very edge of two worlds, teetering on the brink. With every ounce of willpower he possessed, he attempted to flee their grasp, but it felt like fighting against raging waters. A wave of despair washed over him, heavy and all-consuming. The whispers twisted into guttural laughter, swirling around him like a sinister melody. "You can never leave, Timmy. You belong with us. You always have," they cackled, their presence tightening around him, sensing his growing fear. His senses dulled as panic gave way to an eerie calm that blanketed his mind. In that moment, surrender felt tantalizing. He could feel a surge of energy weaving its way through him, dark and sweet like honey melting on warm bread. No longer just shadows, they became a part of him, twisting and turning within his soul, stitching their malevolence into the very fabric of his being. He understood then that he would transform into something entirely different if he abandoned his struggle, a grotesque being, free from the burdens of his previous life. Yet, fear returned, coiling around him like a snake ready to strike. He found himself caught in a tug of war. A yearning to explore the abyss crept into the depths of his thoughts. With a shuddering breath, he realized that the shadows had no intention of letting him go. They craved his essence and would consume him whole unless he fought with all of his might. Timmy closed his eyes tightly, drowning in memories of laughter under the sun, of splashing in puddles with his friends, of the warm scent of cookies baking in the kitchen at home. The essence of who he had been. Those memories flickered like dying embers in a cold wind, fighting against the impending darkness. But as he grasped those frayed strands of humanity, the shadows intensified their assault, their presence pressing against him, pulling at the very core of who he was. Their chilling laughter rang in his ears once more, drowning out his thoughts. They whispered promises of power, of becoming something magnificent. In that moment, he felt his resolve shattering with every surge of dark energy. "I refuse," Timmy gasped, drawing strength from the depths of his spirit. Anger motivated him, a fuel that coursed through his veins as he fought desperately against the oppressive force that sought to smother him. With a final surge of determination, he tore himself from their grasp, bolting forward and stumbling through the trees. He was just a boy, a mere child seeking adventure and a sense of wonder, not a servant of the night. But Hollow Glen had changed in ways he could not comprehend. The woods that used to be familiar transformed overnight into a maze of twisted shadows and gnarled roots. With each frantic step, the chilling whispers followed him like hungry wolves stalking their prey, demanding, taunting. "You can run, but you cannot hide, Timmy. You are ours." The weight of their presence pressed down on him, growing heavier with each moment as he stumbled deeper into the eerie wilderness. Finally, in a burst of panicked energy, he broke free onto a familiar path that led home, yet the shadows clung to him, wrapping around him like shadowy tendrils, gnawing at his thoughts. Retreating into the sanctuary of his house, Timmy slammed the door shut behind him and leaned against the cool wood, gasping for breath. The once cozy corners of his room, filled with bright colors and toys, finally offered some comfort. But the whispers lingered. He could still hear them lurking just outside, a constant reminder that he wasn't truly safe. Sleeping became an impossible feat. Each creak of the house echoed like thunder in his ears, a reminder that he was never alone. Every night, as he lay in bed, he peeked through the window, scanning the surrounding woods, half expecting to see those faceless creatures lurking just beyond the trees. The shadows that had once seemed innocent now lay in murky waiting, guiding his every thought toward despair. Days turned into weeks, and whispers spread among the townsfolk. They expressed concern for Timmy, glancing his way with frowns stitched deep on their brows. The lively spark that once shone brightly in his eyes began to dim, replaced by haunting shadows dancing just beneath the surface of his skin. Friends he had once played tag with in the fields began to stay away, sensing the unsettling aura that clung to him like a heavy cloak. Timmy found himself slipping further away from the world he had once known, swallowed whole by the chilling grasp of those faceless terrors. The laughter of his childhood faded, and he felt a sinking sense of loss with each passing day. Desperation filled his heart as, every night, the whispers grew stronger, promising solace in the power of darkness. They claimed that surrender would grant him strength, transforming him into something more extraordinary than he could ever imagine. Torn between his yearning for a normal life and the unsettling allure of the shadows, he spiraled deeper into confusion, his thoughts clouded and murky. One particularly dark night, when the moon hung high in the sky, radiating a sinister glow, he found himself alone in his room. Shadows danced and twisted on the walls, teasing him, as the whispers wrapped tighter around him, like a cozy blanket that turned into chains. They extended their spectral hands toward him, inviting him to step into their world. Timmy's heart pounded, straining against the weight of it all. He felt a chill run through him, realizing that answering their call might be the only way to find peace. Hesitation crashed against his chest, his heart a wild animal trapped in a cage of uncertainty. But the cold grip of despair distorted his thoughts. Maybe if he couldn't conquer the darkness, perhaps he could embrace it instead. With a shaking voice, almost a whisper, he summoned the courage to speak words that would seal his fate. "I will join you." The words hung in the stillness of the night, echoing like a cursed chant. In an instant, everything twisted and warped. The shadows erupted around him, engulfing him in their dark embrace. As they surrounded him, he felt a crawling sensation beneath his skin, their cold essence merging with his warmth. Terrifying laughter filled his ears, and the whispers surged within him, creating a cacophony, a dissonant choir that drowned out his individuality. No longer was he Timmy Jacobs. He was now a vessel for the faceless terrors, destined to roam the woods forever, stripped of his own face, luring innocent souls to a madness he had unwittingly embraced. He felt himself fade away as the darkness consumed him, weaving its way into the very core of his being. The weight of his decision settled on him, heavy like a boulder, as the world outside faded into nothingness. And in that moment, as he surrendered completely to the shadows, he realized he had lost what it meant to be human. A life of laughter and light transformed into one of endless night, a haunting symphony that echoed through the empty woods of Hollow Glen. Time ceased to hold meaning as the transformation took hold. Days bled into nights, and Timmy, a ghost of his former self, was swallowed by the shadows, communicating with faceless figures who had once haunted him. The woods of Hollow Glen became his new reality, each tree a familiar companion, each rustling leaf a whisper from the past. Once vibrant and full of life, he now wandered aimlessly through the woods, searching for something he could never find. He embraced the haunting presence within him, a darkness that beckoned him forward, urging him to lure others deeper into the forest, to share in the despair he now felt. Though Timmy had lost his identity, memories still clung to him like the autumn leaves swirling around in the chilling wind. Flickers of laughter from joyful days echoed within, haunting him as they danced through the shadows. He remembered playing tag in the warm sunlight, the sound of his friends' voices, and the feeling of pure happiness. Those moments seemed like a distant dream, far removed from the nightmare he now lived. He longed to escape, to break free from the dark power that held him captive, but it was relentless in its pursuit. It hungered for the faces of the living, desperate to proliferate the curse of the faceless ones. He was now a sinister harbinger, preying upon unsuspecting wanderers who foolishly ventured into the night. The once bustling town seemed to feel the weight of Timmy's transformation. The townsfolk became scarce as terrifying tales of the faceless horrors spread like wildfire. Ghost stories were told by firelight, chilling the bones of those brave enough to listen. But despite the warnings, brave souls continued to test their fate. They dared to challenge the haunting whispers echoing through the woods, fearless and resolute, seeking adventure and thrill, but unaware they had wandered into a trap laid by darkness itself. One crisp autumn evening, as the leaves crunched underfoot and the moonlight cast long shadows across the land, a trio of teenagers decided to explore the very woods Timmy once called home. Their names were Sarah, Michael, and Jacob, and they were fueled by adrenaline and bravado. They had heard the stories but chose to laugh them off, convinced that they were more courageous than those who had come before. Danger was a mere illusion, a fairy tale meant to scare children. They were determined to prove themselves brave. The night began with laughter as they entered the forest, their voices ringing out like bells in the stillness. Dismissing the tales spun by fearful townsfolk, they ventured deeper, the thrill of adventure pushing them onward. The trees loomed above like giants, their gnarled branches swaying in the gentle breeze. But as they wandered further, an unsettling atmosphere settled around them, and a chill brushed through the air, sending shivers cascading down their spines. Dismissing their discomfort and emboldened by their excitement, they dared each other to venture off the path. "Let's go over there," Sarah pointed to a cluster of twisted trees that stood apart from the rest. Unbeknownst to them, Timmy was lurking nearby, hidden within the underbrush, giddy with anticipation as he watched the trio's every move. Through the shadows, Timmy observed as they approached the clearing where he had once knelt, trembling and afraid. He had been lost then, filled with a sense of dread, but now he was a part of something far more sinister. He could feel the darkness wrapping around him like a thick cloak, and a vile need twisted within him, a hunger to consume, to snatch their faces away, to feel the sharp sting of their despair as they disappeared into his own nightmare. As the trio stepped into the illuminated circle of moonlight, laughter morphed into silence, their cheerful expressions shifting to one of unease. They suddenly became aware of an oppressive presence weaving through the air, something unseen yet very much felt. Shadows climbed the trees, creeping closer, wrapping around them like a foreboding shroud. Timmy felt exhilaration rise within him. It was intoxicating to witness their growing fear. The quickening of their hearts sang sweetly to his twisted mind. "Is anyone there?" Michael called, his voice trembling against the stillness of the night. Timmy felt the familiar urge to reach out, a sudden rush of power coursing through him as the whispers guided his hands, shaping the shadows into unfathomable terror. "Do not be afraid, we are friendly," he thought desperately, though the words tainted with malice slithered around him, coaxing the frightened souls closer. Then, like a curtain being drawn back, the veil of darkness descended upon them with a chilling ferocity. Disembodied laughter erupted from the shadows, echoing through the clearing. The teenagers stumbled backward, their eyes wide with dread as the faceless figures materialized from the darkened woods, their forms glowing with an eerie energy. "You're not alone here," Timmy's voice dripped with mocking cruelty, rising above their panicked whispers. The shadows crackled, and to their horror, he stepped forward, faceless, a haunting specter of his former self. The realization crashed over them like a wave of icy water, pulling them under. Their hearts raced wildly, pounding against their ribcages, and as they turned to flee, the darkness tightened its grasp. The faceless figures shifted closer, their elongated shadows ensnaring the teenagers in an invisible web, a trap of despair. Their frantic attempts to escape transformed into a futile struggle. The more they fought against the darkness, the tighter it wound around them, morphing into putrid reminders of their impending doom. Timmy could see the confusion and terror etched onto their faces as they began to understand the fate befalling them. Faces would be stripped away, identities erased, and they would join the throng of faceless horrors that prowled the woods, trapped forever in the nightmare where shadows ruled. "You wanted to play," he mused with a twisted smile, the darkness sharpening his cruel laughter while the faceless figures drew nearer, their hands outstretched, hungering for their prey. One by one, their screams echoed through the forest, sharp cries that painted the night with horror. Timmy stood amidst the gathering of malevolent spirits, relishing the chaos before him. With each removed face, the humans dissolved into shadows, lost forever to a realm from which there was no return. As their cries faded into the whispering wind, he could feel the essence of their identities swirling within him, filling the void, becoming crowded with anguish and despair. He felt their fears and hopes mingle with his own, creating a cacophony of lost dreams. The night stretched on, an unforgiving expanse echoing with new stories of terror. Hollow Glen trembled beneath an oppressive weight, broken only by the occasional flicker of something more sinister, a slight rustle behind the trees or the chilling whispers that danced into the stillness. The faceless ones craved new victims, seeking to ensnare unsuspecting wanderers into their eternal embrace. Timmy felt the echoes of their despair, a haunting melody he could not ignore. He was no longer just a boy consumed by darkness, he embodied the terror that haunted Hollow Glen. It coursed through him, knitting him closer to the black abyss that awaited so many before him. Yet even as he reveled in the nightmares of others, something dark and twisted clawed at the remnants of his humanity. In those fleeting moments of quiet, when the whispers subsided and darkness held its breath, lonely fragments of longing struggled against the tide of swirling shadow. With every soul drawn into the torment, the weight of loneliness grew heavier, erasing even the faintest whispers of defiance. Timmy wanted to scream for help, to reach back for the sun-drenched days of innocence that had long since slipped away. Darkness revealed an insatiable hunger, a vicious mockery of joy that filled his mind, drowning his pleas before they could ever escape. As his journey into despair concluded, the horizon darkened and twisted into a grotesque reflection of everything that had come before. The woods around him whispered ancient secrets, secrets of ages past, full of sorrow and regret. He felt trapped in a world of shadows, a realm where dreams turned to dust, leaving only echoes of laughter that now felt like cruel taunts. The shadows, now fully consumed, filled with a sanguine hunger for more, as the terrors reached even deeper into the recesses of Hollow Glen. Yet deep within him, a flicker of resistance remained. It was a small, stubborn flame that refused to be snuffed out, a reminder of who he once had been. A kind-hearted boy who loved to play with friends beneath a golden sun. That flicker fought against the darkness, a silent scream trapped within. Timmy clutched tightly onto that fragment of hope, even as the shadows beckoned him deeper into their embrace. The woods continued their relentless pull, whispering promises of new faces, new fears. Yet amidst the tales of terror, a question began to take root in his mind. Could he rediscover the light that once filled his heart? Or was he destined to remain a lost soul forever, tangled in a web of shadows and despair? Only time would tell if he could find a way back before he was entirely consumed by the haunting presence that lingered in Hollow Glen. With every moonlit night that passed in the little town of Hollow Glen, scary stories floated through the whispering winds, speaking of faceless terrors that lurked in the dark. These tales were woven into the fabric of Hollow Glen, echoing in the hearts of its people. Yet, they could never grasp the truth behind these spine-tingling stories. The vibrant laughter of youth that once filled the air had dimmed into a haunting silence, and at the center of it all lay the mystery of a boy named Timmy Jacobs, lost forever to the shadows. Timmy had been just an average boy, full of life and adventure. He loved exploring the forest that wrapped around Hollow Glen like a protective embrace. He would sprint through the tall grasses, chasing after butterflies, and climb trees just to take in the beautiful sights below. But that was before the darkness had seeped into the very foundation of their beloved woods. Now, it was not just the rustling leaves and chirping crickets that filled the air, it was a concealed presence, a creeping terror that coiled tightly around the hearts of the townsfolk. As time marched on, fear had started to cast a heavy shadow over Hollow Glen. Families huddled together in their homes, sharing stories over flickering candles, each anxious glance cast toward the darkened woods. Where once there had been joy and laughter, there was now an overwhelming sense of dread. Children were warned to stay close to their homes, for the woods had transformed from a place of wonder into a haunted maze, filled with whispers of the faceless terrors that prowled the paths. Yet amidst this shroud of fear, the lingering memory of Timmy Jacobs haunted the shadows. The elders would speak softly of how he had vanished, pulled into the depths of the forest, never to return. They warned the brave and foolish not to wander too far, lest they tempt fate, just as Timmy had done long ago. The stories twisted and turned, morphing into eerie warnings that gripped the town like a vice. Curiosity, however, is a powerful force that can rally even the most cautious of hearts. One fateful night, a group of teenagers, bubbling with bravado and tainted by a sense of invincibility, decided to test the boundaries of this fear. It was a crisp night. The moon shone brightly, casting silver tendrils of light through the skeletal branches of the trees. With laughter that danced through the air, they stepped into the dark woods. They believed they would conquer the old legends, the faceless terrors would bow to their courage. Their confidence surged as they ventured deeper in, ignoring the warnings that whispered at the edges of their minds. These reckless adventurers, high on youthful enthusiasm, wandered further and further down paths enshrouded in deep darkness. They splashed through puddles and kicked at leaves, crunching them underfoot as if challenging the very shadows that clung to the foliage. Little did they know that the darkness around them was not just an abstract fear, it was very real, alive, and watching with eager anticipation. As they stumbled upon a clearing beneath the glowing moon, everything changed. There stood a statue that had once been a symbol of safety and protection, now twisted, worn, and sending chills down their spines. As if alive, the darkness slithered out from the towering trees and coiled around them like an invisible serpent, draping them in a cloak of dread that felt both heavy and suffocating. A sense of trepidation washed over the teens, washing away their courage, leaving them confused and fearful. From somewhere within the shadows, the familiar voice of Timmy Jacobs broke the stillness, a voice now steeped in sorrow and longing. "You've come to play," he rasped through the chill night air. The sound slipped into their ears like ice water, causing their hearts to race. Faceless figures began to crawl from the depths of the dark corners of the clearing, their shapes bending and swirling, hungry and haunting, inching closer with every heartbeat. The group faltered, eyes wide with terror as the faceless figures began to tighten their grip, creating a tension so thick it felt as if they could be sliced through with a knife. The merry sounds of laughter transformed into blood-curdling screams, cracking the silence like a dam bursting. Panic erupted among the teenagers. They turned on their heels and bolted, but the twisted roots of trees snagged at their feet. The whispering shadows snared them in fear's relentless grasp. It was chaos. Desperate shouts filled the air as friends stumbled and fell, frantically clawing their way back toward the safety of the town. The faceless ones closed in, their shapes shifting in the dark, razor-sharp fingers reaching out with an eerie softness that belied their deadly intent. A scream pierced the night. One friend's terror echoed through the woods, sending shivers racing down spines. Timmy, now straddling the veil between innocence and darkness, stared wide-eyed as the faceless terrors lunged forward, claiming the terrified teens as their own. The darkness feasted upon their identities, their faces dissolving into the void, absorbed by the very shadows that once promised adventure. Timmy felt the familiar tug of despair, a twisted reflection of his own fate being played out before him. Each cry, each desperate plea resonated within his essence, a bittersweet symphony that filled the hollow space he now inhabited. Do you hear them? He whispered into the night, a haunting smile playing on his lips. Join us, surrender your essence. You'll never feel pain as we embrace the shadows. The shadows thickened and pulsed with energy, drawing closer as the teens, caught in the grip of fear, felt their spirits start to slip away. In that fleeting moment, the grasp of despair pulled at their hearts. One by one, the brightness of their souls dimmed, twisted, and faded into the faceless void. Their laughter, once bright and full of mischief, was extinguished, replaced by an anguished silence that surrounded Timmy like a shroud. Within him, the shadows surged with new horrors, voices echoing within him, blending together until their identities were lost among the ancient whispers of the dark. As the screams faded into nothingness, Hollow Glen was left heavy with an ambiance so thick it was as if the very air had thickened into a blanket of sadness. No longer was it filled with the joyful sounds of life, instead, it resonated with the haunting echo of lost souls. The shadows had claimed what they desired, expanding their reach, and darkness replaced the hope that once thrived in every corner. Timmy, now forever entwined with the darkness, roamed the woods as an eternal servant, a puppet of shadows that danced through the trees. With each night that fell, he became more the terror he had once feared, whispering sweet temptations to those who dared to wander too close. He was no longer just a boy. He had transformed into a part of the very fabric of the forest's curse, ensuring that new souls would find their way into the grasping arms of despair. He looked at how the darkness lured unsuspecting adventurers into its embrace. Each step they took further into the woods was like a moth drawn to a flame, oblivious to the danger that awaited them. Like a sly fox, Timmy would then beckon them closer, promising secrets and adventures beyond their wildest dreams. But as they ventured deeper, the truths of the forest would slip away, replaced by unfathomable dread as the faceless shadows encircled them, devouring their identities. And thus, it continued, the cycle of despair would play on endlessly. The faceless terrors would forever hunger for more spirits to consume, and Timmy Jacobs was now lost to the darkness, eternally prowling through the woods of Hollow Glen. The once vibrant earth that had cradled his laughter and dreams now served as a prison for his soul. Hidden beneath the weight of faceless echoes, he became a guardian of this fearsome realm, ensuring that no one would ever escape the clutches of the faceless horrors that ruled the shadows of Hollow Glen.